Richard Branson, Virgin Group, so many accolades or so many titles I could put behind your name, but let's start with what you're doing here. Why are you at the IMF?
We held a meeting this morning of the Caribbean heads of states, and the idea was to see whether we can come up with some positive ways of rebuilding the Caribbean, whether we can actually make sure that in the process of rebuilding the Caribbean we can rebuild it with green sustainable energy that can withstand future hurricanes. And whether we can help the Caribbean get back on its feet. And the Prime Ministers of the Caribbean agreed that with CARICOM, which is the body that sort of oversees the Caribbean, and ourselves, that we'll go out there, we'll find a tremendous team of people, and we'll get to work doing just that, and do it as fast as we can, and hopefully when we look back at these horrible hurricanes in 2 or 3 years' time, we can feel that at least something positive came out of what has been abject misery to many people in the Caribbean.
If I ask you, what state is the Caribbean in right now? What are the words, what are the images that come to mind to describe it?
It depends which country you're talking about, but I'm obviously from the British Virgin Islands, and I would say 80% of homes are destroyed. There's no electricity. There's limited clean water. It's been devastating. But if you met the people, you would see the biggest smile on their face, the biggest determination just to get their lives back together. But they need a helping hand, and so I suppose because I'm in a position where I can, meet people who run the World Banks or meet people who run these organizations, I can help convene the organizations that can make a real difference, and hopefully and make that smile on their face a bit bigger in the future.
So you've made a beginning. What steps are you going to take? What is needed? Is it mostly money? Is it mostly getting funding, coming to the IMF, coming to the World Bank? Is it what do you need? What needs to be done?
Well, look, a lot of these countries went from being financially okay to almost bankrupt. I mean, it's been, suddenly, tourists aren't coming anymore. The financial service industry has most likely left and gone elsewhere. So perhaps the only jobs left are rebuilding jobs. So, so that the money that's needed. And the financial help that's needed is, first of all, on an immediate basis, just getting infrastructure back up and running. Getting electricity back and running, which is very important. Getting the telecoms back and running, that's very important. Getting clean water to everybody's homes. But then equally, you've got to start planning on the long-term infrastructure on our island, which got equally badly hit. The one thing that survived was the solar panels, the clean energy. And so, the very next day we had electricity, whereas the island next door, Tortola, a big island, they may not have their electricity back for 9 months. And that's, big generators and diesel run electricity. So, having seen that, if we can actually rebuild the electricity for the Caribbean based on like small microgrids rather than one massive big grid, which where the power lines can fall down and get broken. That may well be a better way of going, and that's the kind of thing we're looking at.
You just had a meeting with Christine Lagarde.
Yeah, I saw her to talk about ways that that the IMF could maybe some of these nations may need the convening power of the IMF to sort of sit down with the banks and say, look, these countries have got some issues. Maybe the IMF can sit down and try to work with the banks to spread out the money that they owe them a bit longer. We haven't actually, the countries haven't asked me to do it. I was just proactively trying to see. Insurance, the IMF have a lot of experience on insurance, and I think the countries need to look at disaster insurance in a much bigger way, and that's the kind of experience we can get from the IMF.
And she's amenable to this?
Oh yeah, she's been very amenable, and you know, everyone, you know, we've been to the World Bank today, we've been to the IBF, and you know, a number of different banks, and everyone's been very warm, very helpful.
What do you make of how do you rate the response of nations like the U.S. and Puerto Rico, even the UK, Virgin Islands? I mean, has it fallen short? Has it been enough? Is it just that when a disaster is this big, it's hard to condemn anyone or fault anyone for not doing it as well as some say they could or should?
The UK, I mean, you know, in the particular islands that I live in, the British Virgin Islands, the UK were wonderful. I mean, all the prisoners escaped in the hurricane, and so you had 200 prisoners running riot and one or two quite dangerous ones. And the UK sent in the Marines, and the Marines brought stability to the islands very quickly. And the Marines were wonderfully helpful in trying to get some of the infrastructure back up and running again. And I think everybody in the British Virgin Islands are enormously grateful to them. Now we move on to the next stage, which is maybe asking governments to put their hands in their pocket, and that's always can be more difficult.
But I want to ask you specifically about Donald Trump and Puerto Rico, because some have been critical. Obviously, the Trump team feels they've done a good job. When you watch that, what do you say? I'm not closely enough involved with Puerto Rico to say one way or the other. What I will say is that when the Virgin Islands had their problem, the Puerto Ricans were fantastic. I mean, there was about a week or two where people didn't have water, they didn't have food. The Puerto Ricans just, I mean, they piled food and water onto ships, and they sped across to the British Virgin Islands. The governor of the Puerto Rico, got some planes and just flew food backwards and forwards. They're not a wealthy state, but I would like to give them the biggest hug ever, and they deserve all the support they can get. And yeah, I mean, I've seen one or two of the comments Donald Trump's made, and I think it's sad when they need all the help, and the president should be very warm and welcoming and very helpful. I want to ask you about Hyperloop. If you get Hyperloop in, you're going to be able to move around much more quickly. Tell us more about where you are with this project, how it's going to work, and what's driving it, and what you expect to gain from it.
Well, we love getting involved in cutting-edge technologies, whether it's sending people to space, whether it's putting people on Virgin cruise ships, whether it's flying people around the world. Virgin Hyperloop is one of the more exciting cutting-edge technologies we've ever got involved in. It's been developed out in the Las Vegas, just outside Las Vegas, in the desert there. It's basically a giant tunnel. Inside that tunnel, there will be a train that will be which will levitate using magnetic traction, and it will go up to speeds of something like 700 miles an hour, so it'll go quicker than an aeroplane. And it can carry cargo, and it can carry people. So if you just take a little country like Great Britain, we can take people from Scotland to Edinburgh, or Scotland to Glasgow, Scotland to London, or vice versa, in about 45 minutes. Today it takes about 5 hours. So it can be transformative for a country. If you take cargo, the ports are full of lorries coming in and out of ports on possibly very valuable real estate. We could actually unload the cargo in an island just off the port, whisk it 20 miles inland in no time at all, and then the lorries can go 20 miles inland, and all that valuable space on the ports can be turned into houses or other things. So So I think it's a really exciting thing, and we're proud to be involved with it.
How expensive will it be to actually build something like this?
It'll be a lot cheaper, we believe, than building, conventional railway networks. And of course, conventional railway networks have a lot of intrinsic problems attached to them, and you don't go that fast on them. So I think that we'll be able to ferry passengers a lot more cheaply than aeroplanes. And in time, I think the price could come down much closer to a normal railway network than an airline.
How much would a ticket cost me, do you think, when it actually gets started?
Somewhere between the price of a train ticket and an airline ticket, but you'll get there much quicker.
How difficult in this day and age? You've got, obviously, it's it's close to the ground still.
It can be either under the ground, it could be up in the air, it could be alongside a railway line, it could be alongside a waterways. It could be above a waterways. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different places that you can put it.
So you wouldn't have to worry so much about right-of-ways and obtaining those and paying for all that?
No, I mean, I think again, we ought to be able to be. It ought to be a lot easier for us than for a conventional rail line that has to knock down houses and things to get places.
And is it something that you'll look for, or you want? This is going to be purely a Virgin Group investment. Will you join?
There are other investors in Virgin Hyperloop, and we'll be bringing in other investors in too. Virgin operates trains, so we're the biggest train operator, for instance, in the UK. We took the West Coast Main Line. We used to have 7 million people using it. Now we have nearly 40 million people using it. But that is getting to capacity. So Hyperloop would be the perfect answer to deal with our capacity problems. The British government are also building another line, but we think there's room for both.
Where do you think you'd like to launch the first one?
I'm always in a hurry. I'm getting older now. But I think I'd be surprised if you don't have a Virgin Hyperloop set up somewhere in the world within 3 to 4 years' time.
Richard Branson, you may be getting older, but you don't seem to be slowing down, not in any way at all.
Thank you very much.